currently actually working on, where it's just got a comic base to it, then you still want to have it based in reality. Even though I'm doing a fantasy novel, it's still grounded in reality, and then all the characters are comedic. There might be the occasional comedic situation. A good example would be Supernatural. The characters,
crack wise,
yeah,
but yeah.
are crack and wise, and funny situations left and right and everything like that. But the world itself is still deadly serious. With the occasional, if Ben Enlund gets a hold of a script, you can have a little bit of wackiness going on, but that's usually because the world is suddenly looking through a bizarre world, looking glass type thing that's messing with their heads. But for the most part, the world stays serious, and then the characters get oddball.
That makes me think of when the writers for 3.5 Men wrote an episode of CSI. It was very exciting.
I basically look at it as two different ways with humor. I have stories that have some funny thing, either funny things happen or funny characters in them, and then I have what I consider to be straight up humor. And straight up humor is where the world becomes a wacky place too. Yeah, I've read, because we had 4 Redheads of the Apocalypse, and that's mostly taking place in hell. And the premise of that is the 4 horsemen die, and their socialite wives get stuck with their jobs, and so they're in hell, and they're bad at their jobs. And we base Satan on Selena Rosen, our publisher, so she is. She is an event in herself anyway, so that character just writes itself. And but it's a lot of fun, but the world is strange. Hell is a very strange place, and they're doing all kinds of crazy things to try to to try to do their jobs, and then to try to get out of doing their jobs later once they decide that they don't want to do that anymore. And so that's a place where the world is a very strange place, and the world itself is funny, in addition to the characters being funny. But I look at that as a straight up humor novel, where it's House of Doors is not funny at all. It's not a funny novel at all, but there's lots of funny lines in it because in real life people say funny things, and there are a few funny situations. So there's a point where they're building Molotov cocktails, and one of the 15-year-old boys pipes up, and he's really hesitant to say that tampons make the best fuses. And the older woman character is like, yeah, I don't even want to know how you know that. But you can have funny things like that. That came up in my research. I'm like, oh, seriously, it's got to be the 15-year-old boy that knows that, because it's in the Anarchist Cookbook or something. Yeah, I'm now on the CIA watch list after that book, so I'm like researching dynamite and Molotov cocktails, fully automatic weapons.
They're watching you.
Well, it's an alien invasion coming, you're going to be able to kill them. Yeah, I doubt they'll buy that. The CIA,
Well, another good book for if you've got a sort of serious world, and it's the character's viewpoint of common sense makes it comedic. The Sir Apropos of Nothing series by Peter David, where the main character is destined to be a sidekick and refuses to accept his destiny. He gets so amazingly upset at the guy who's supposed to be the hero, and he refuses to be relegated to that role. And because of that, Peter David winds up trouncing so many of the fantasy tropes that it really, really works, and that's the comedy value of it. He's basically turned his main character into Wile E. Coyote, but not intending to be the bad guy. He just becomes a bad guy because he refuses to be the sidekick. It's a great series.
It's the story of my life right there. Well, I've asked all the questions so far, so let me ask you if you want to ask a question that we can talk about.
No pressure.
No pressure.
Apparently not.
So we'll come back to you.
I'll keep
Pass.
thinking. I'll keep thinking.
No, that's what I'm doing, is I'm thinking, I'm like,
They didn't expect this. No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
In addition, any ideas that I had, I've worked subtly into the conversation already. Talked about that. I cannot think of any.
Well, I guess we can say, what are some of your who do you feel like has done some of your favorite worlds?
Good.
And which ones do you think are really good examples of world building?
Bruce.
I love Jim Butcher's worlds, both for Harry Dresden and for his Codex Alera stuff. Excellent worlds.
Do you know how the Codex Alera came about?
I do. It was a bet to combine Pokemon and Roman Legion stories. I'd heard that.
Because he got into an argument with another guy in his early, in his college writing days. He got in an argument with another guy about.
He could write anything.
Yeah, that a
Put
good,
any two
a
things
good
together.
writer can write anything. And the other guy's position was that there were some subjects that not even a good writer can make good. And the Codex Alera was born, and he can't even remember, if I remember correctly, he can't even remember the guy's name. He just ran with it. It's like, I don't care that I won.
I can make Pokemon World War too. That was funny.
And if you haven't read the book, you wouldn't know that's what started
very
it,
subtle.
unless somebody points it out. Because it actually deals with elementals.
Just
and
elemental
things.
magic,
Elemental
elements.
Yeah. And it's then when he goes, so-and-so, I choose you, and you're like, oh dear God, that is
Pikachu!
Pokemon. Brutus is a Pokemon spirit, oh my God. Stephen Brust, fantastic world building. Roger Zelazny, talk about world building.
Oh God, he's like my favorite author.
Amber.
My Princess and Amber.
The Amber series, if you're not familiar with the Amber series, literally, Amber is the center of the universe, or at least until later on in the series, when you find out there's two poles to the universe. Everything else is shadow in between, including Earth. And shadow is his term for multiple dimensions. So, I've got a black hat in front of me, and there's another completely different shadow, where the only difference is that hat's red. Everything else is exactly the same. So, infinite number of things out there in shadow, and the royal family of Amber can control all the dimensions. That is literally world building, because his characters build worlds as they walk.
Yeah.
It's actually a philosophical debate between them at some point in the series, where they're like, do the shadows exist before we think of them? Or are we just traveling between them and they exist already?
He did another, it was a standalone book called A Night in the Lonesome October.
October.
Oh, and it's great because I was about 50 pages and went, oh my God, these are all universal monsters. All the
Yes.
characters in it were like, it was because it was when they got to, whatever the Wolfman's name was, I'm blanking on it now, but it was his name in the movie, and I went, oh, yeah, of course, it was just brilliant, and it was funny and dark at the same time, and it was so very different from Amber. And it was cool that he could make some very different
Yes.
worlds. I mean, some people are very, you love their work, but you're like, okay, this world isn't really all that different from your last one.
Another one that I like is David Weber, military science fiction. His
Yes.
Honor Harrington universe is made of awesome for world building.
Yes.
The Bajol Miles
Yes,
Bernstein book.
awesome
Yes.
books, awesome.
Her other books as well, including a much maligned early fantasy novel of hers called The Spirit Ring, which had beautiful world building on an alternate history. Basically, if magic really existed and the church in Italy acknowledged the fact that it existed.
Marion Zimmer Bradley's
Yeah.
world.
Yeah, she was good. Well, and McCaffrey. I mean, obviously some of the greats there were.
Yeah, Herbert.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Frank Herbert. Yeah. But yeah, you get some amazing worlds there. But even some of the newer people.
Princess Bride.
Have you come up with a question yet?
No, I'm still answering her.
Yeah,
I'm
keep going.
still going all
Have
these
you
great world
ever
building.
been tempted to try to take and change portions of somebody else's published world to make it into something you could use for your own?
Funny you should say that.
Uh-oh.
No,
The
not,
camera is watching you,
not
right
me,
there.
Not me directly. A friend of mine is putting together a role-playing game that was greatly inspired by another role-playing game, because as it stands,